My father once forgot my birthday and no one at the table corrected him. It was a Thursday. I remember because I still had lab after school, and I rushed home thinking maybe they'd have a cake or something small. I just won first place in the district science competition with my project on gray water recycling, and the certificate still smelled like toner and teenage pride. I even wore the ribbon like a badge on my hoodie, hoping someone would ask. But when I walked through the front door, Mom was yelling something about the oven, and Dad had already cracked open a beer. Kyle had scored a goal in gym class, or maybe it was practice. I don't remember, and the whole dinner centered around that. They talked about his footwork, his coach, how proud they were. Somewhere between the overcooked chicken and Dad's second beer, he looked at me and said, "Pass the potatoes, Susan." I froze. No one looked up. Not Mom, not Kyle, not even Grandma Margaret, who usually noticed everything even when her mind was drifting. I sat there invisible, passing the mashed potatoes like some phantom Susan, like I didn't exist in that room with my own damn name and birthday. That's what people used to say about him. He meant well, as if forgetting your daughter's name and birthday was a charming quirk. I started saying it too, just to survive the awkward silences that followed every disappointment. I live in California now, Palo Alto, a city where no one knows your past unless you hand it to them. It's dry here. Sunlight feels surgical, like it cuts through your skin and peels back everything you've been hiding. I moved here 3 years ago and no one noticed. Not really. I didn't announce it. Just packed up, left Naperville behind. I unsubscribed from the family group text one quiet Thursday evening. No one responded. Not even a single. "Did you mean to leave message?" Sometimes I think I could vanish entirely and they'd just assume I was somewhere else, happily existing off-screen, like a forgotten character in a long-running sitcom. I keep a little desk near my bedroom window. It's cheap wood IKEA probably, but it gets good light. That's where I was sitting when I opened the email. I wasn't expecting anything. It was buried between newsletters and shipping confirmations. The subject line read, "Happy Birthday from WaterSense Interns 2021. I clicked it. It was a looping e-card with dancing water droplets wearing birthday hats and a cheesy ukulele song in the background. I laughed out loud, not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic that a government-sponsored internship remembered my birthday, and my own family didn't. That was last year. This year, no one remembered at all. I should be used to it. I've spent years pretending it didn't matter. But there's a difference between being alone and being forgotten. One is a choice. The other is a wound. I looked over at the wall above my desk. There's a photo my roommate Ashley took me standing barefoot on the beach in Half Moon Bay, arms stretched out like I'm trying to embrace the ocean. I look happy and free and very far away. My phone buzzed against the edge of the desk. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then the voicemail icon blinked. I hesitated before pressing play. "You're needed at Kyle's wedding next month. Be there." The voice was unmistakable. Flat. Authoritative. Dad. Not a please. Not a "how are you?" Just a command, like I was still 16 and grounded for using the car without asking. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering above delete. Be there. When I moved across the country, I didn't say goodbye because no one would have asked where I was going. It wasn't a dramatic exit. No slammed doors or teary airport hugs. I didn't leave a note on the fridge or send a final message. I just packed the last box into Ashley's hatchback, locked the Naperville apartment for the final time, and left. No one called to ask why the lease was ending early. No one even noticed it had. I remember standing in that apartment on Jefferson Avenue, staring at the bare walls. The place had been mine for 2 years after high school: cheap carpet, a stubborn oven, and a water heater that wheezed in the winter. There were no childhood relics, no boxes labeled Samantha's keepsakes because nothing had been saved for me. The year Kyle chose to attend St. Luke's College, an overpriced ivy-encrusted school in Vermont, Dad said, Don't expect us to fund both kids. I was 17, so I didn't. I got a partial scholarship to Illinois State, then transferred to a California university after sophomore year. I waited tables, worked campus IT shifts, did homework in break rooms. My parents never visited. They never asked if I had enough. When the tuition bills came, they didn't even pretend to open them. Ashley stood by the front door with a box of mugs. Are you seriously not telling them? There's nothing to tell, I said, wrapping the last of my notebooks in an old hoodie. I'm not disappearing. I'm just changing zip codes. You haven't talked to your mom in 6 months. Exactly. Ashley didn't press. She had seen the missed calls that never happened, the texts that were all one way. She knew that when I called home, the conversations revolved around Kyle's internships or Mom's book club. I had nothing they wanted to ask about. The drive to Palo Alto was uneventful. We stopped in Salt Lake for gas and a Red Bull-fueled diner dinner. I remember thinking if the car flipped right now, it might take them a week to notice. That sounds darker than I meant it, but the thought wasn't born from pain. It was from clarity. Now, years later, my life is 1,000 miles away from Naperville in more ways than geography. I work at a mid-sized tech startup that actually values my ideas. I have health insurance, a 401k, and a boss who remembers my name. My apartment has a balcony where I drink coffee at sunrise. No one yells. No one critiques. The silence here is deliberate and clean, peaceful. It's nothing like the hollow quiet of growing up unseen. Eric, Ashley's ex-turned-mutual friend, comes by sometimes. He's in product design. The other day he asked me what my parents thought about my job. I don't think they know what I do, I said. Do you ever want to tell them? I shrugged. It wouldn't change anything. I opened my laptop later that night and sorted through old email folders. There was one still labeled Family, mostly forwarded junk Christmas chain letters from 2014, and a couple of links to Kyle's LinkedIn profile from Dad. I hovered over the folder, then clicked Delete. No confirmation needed. Just gone. I thought about the landlord back in Illinois. He'd never met my parents. When I broke the lease, I'd handled everything myself: deposits, keys, cleanup. There was no emergency contact. No one to sign on my behalf. The signature on every form had been mine. It felt right. Like a line drawn in permanent marker between then and now. I reached for my phone, opened Instagram. I wasn't following Kyle's fiancée, but her account was public. She had posted a photo of a wedding planner checklist, dresses, menu, tasting, seating charts. The caption read, "Can't wait to meet the whole Johnson family." Apparently, I do exist when it's convenient. The voicemail had come in just after 7:00 p.m. last night. No preamble, no "Hi, honey." Just my father's voice, flat and mildly annoyed, as if he were following up on an unpaid invoice. "You're needed at Kyle's wedding next month. Be there." I played it twice. Not for nostalgia, for evidence. He hadn't mentioned a date, location, or even asked how I was. Just a directive. I was a name on a list. A place setting on a seating chart. A missing accessory in the carefully curated family image they wanted to present. I didn't reply. By noon, the next day, Patricia called. FaceTime, which was bold. I let it ring until the last second, then answered. Her face appeared perfectly framed and lit as always, hair set in curlers and makeup only half finished. She looked like she was preparing for a press conference, not a call with her daughter. "Well," she said, folding her arms. "You got your father's message?" I did. Silence. "We expect you to be there. It's important for the family." "You mean it's important for the photos?" She inhaled sharply. "Don't be petty. People notice things. Appearances matter." "For once, I agree. And the appearance you're after, it's fake." Her eyes narrowed, voice turning syrupy. "You'll regret isolating yourself from us one day, Samantha. I'm already regretting answering this call." She clicked her tongue the way she did when the dog tracked in mud or someone forgot to RSVP to her garden brunch. Then she ended the call without another word. 3 minutes later, Kyle texted, "Not hi. Not glad to hear from you. Just, just show up. You don't even have to say anything." I stared at it, rereading it until the screen dimmed. No invitation, no warmth. Just a command like I was part of the catering staff. I considered responding with something biting. Instead, I opened the voice memo app and recorded my own reply, not to send, but to remind myself I had a voice. "I'm not going back," I whispered. "I don't belong to them." A beat passed, then louder, "I'm not going back. I don't belong to them." It felt final. Later that evening, my phone buzzed again, this time with a name I hadn't seen in months: Grandma Margaret. "Darling," she said, her voice a soft rasp of chamomile and defiance. I saw the engagement post. "Your brother looks miserable." I laughed before I could stop myself. "You always did have sharper eyes than the rest of them. You don't owe them anything, Samantha. Especially not attendance." "I know, but they're acting like I do. They always do, until they don't get what they want." She was the only one who'd ever sent birthday cards. The only one who noticed when I disappeared from the group thread. When I was 16, she gave me a necklace and whispered, "Don't let them make you small." I hadn't worn the necklace in years, but I still kept it in the drawer beside my bed. "I'm proud of you," she added, "even if they can't be. Thanks, Grandma." After we hung up, I sat on the floor with my laptop scrolling through the wedding website Kyle's fiancé had set up. It was full of white space gold cursive and phrases like "forever begins here." Her name was Lily Harper, now Lily Johnson in the making. She looked pristine, perfect, like she'd stepped out of a catalog for mid-tier wealth and higher-tier ambition. I closed the laptop. Then my phone lit up. It was a message from Eric. You know, Kyle's fiancé. She was in my poli-sci class at Northwestern. Her family is very status-aware. The wedding invite arrived elegant, embossed, and missing one name: mine. Ashley was the one who saw it first. She walked into my apartment holding her phone like it had personally offended her. She posted it on Instagram, she said, thumbing through her feed. "Look." It was a story from Madeline Foster, soon to be Madeline Johnson, a close-up of the cream envelope, gold-trimmed and calligraphed within an inch of its glossy life. Below it, the caption, "Love and Legacy. Our final list, can't wait to celebrate with every member of our blended family." Ashley zoomed in. "Look, there's Kyle, your parents, even second cousins I forgot existed. And not me," I said flatly. "Nope, not even a ghost of your name." I stared at the screen, at the list that could have been written in invisible ink for all I mattered. There had been no save the date, no RSVP card in my mailbox. Just a forwarded text from Patricia weeks ago. "You're needed at Kyle's wedding next month." I was expected but not acknowledged. Summoned but not seen. "I'm not on the guest list," I told Ashley. "I'm the wallpaper they forgot I was even part of the room." She flopped on my couch. "This is actual insanity. You're his only sibling. That's never counted for much." I walked over to my printer, pulled out the invite file from the family email thread, the version Madeline had emailed for our records. It was beautifully formatted and glaringly incomplete. I hit print. When it came out, I pinned it beside my framed email from sophomore year, an old note from Professor Lynn, my freshman advisor. She had written, "Your solo project shows real promise. I'd like to nominate you for the Colburn Fellowship." No one in my family had ever mentioned it, not even after I won. Now on the wall, side by side, a list I'd never be on and a moment no one had ever seen. My phone buzzed. "Patricia, stop being dramatic. Just come." No greeting, no apology, no explanation why I'd been excluded from the original list. It was like being gaslit in cursive. Ashley peeked over my shoulder. "They don't see you until you defy them. Then suddenly you're difficult." "Classic," I muttered. Eric dropped by later that evening. He brought boba and an update. So he said halfway into his tapioca pearls, I dug around a bit. The Fosters Madeline's family big-time Boston elites. Her dad's a federal judge. Mom's some kind of education reform lobbyist. Very into image. Of course they are. And get this, Kyle's trying to angle his way into a VC-backed law tech firm. The wedding's practically a political move. I raised an eyebrow. So I'm… what? The family liability. He hesitated. Forget it, I said. I already know. The last time I'd been excluded this cleanly was Kyle's engagement party. I found out via a photo Patricia posted her in pearls. Kyle in a navy blazer. Madeline in a dress that cost more than my monthly rent. No one had thought to mention it to me. When I texted, Patricia responded with, "Oh, you wouldn't have been able to make it anyway." So far. That sentence had burned hotter than a slap. I picked up the printed invite again, its thick cardstock soft against my fingers. I flipped it over. Still blank. Still missing. I thought about sending a response. Something cold. Something clinical. I drafted a reply to Patricia, typed and deleted it 5 times. In the end, I said nothing. The silence said everything. It was nearly midnight when my phone rang again, this time from Grandma Margaret. "Samantha," she said softly, "you should know something about the will." I was written out of the family will, but I was never written in as a daughter to begin with. The train ride to Oak Park felt longer than it used to. Not in distance, just in silence. Grandma Margaret's voice had cracked on the phone, and I hadn't asked for details. She said, "I need to see you. I have something you deserve to know." The air in her house still smelled like lemon oil and dry books. Nothing changed, and yet everything had. I walked past the grandfather clock, the threadbare rug, the framed wedding photo of my parents smiling like they were ever good at it. At the end of the hallway, Margaret sat in her reading chair, thinner than I remembered. A printed folder rested on her lap. "I should have told you sooner," she said without preamble. But I didn't want to make the wound worse. I sat across from her, barely breathing. "In 2020, she continued, I updated my will. You were to inherit the condo and the bulk of my savings." I didn't speak. She looked away. "In 2021, your father came to visit. Without warning. He brought papers. And Mr. Collier. Mr. Collier. Our family's lawyer since before I was born. He always wore suspenders like time had stopped in 1975. They said I'd made a mistake," Margaret whispered. "That Kyle needed a home base. That you were already gone." James didn't yell, but he kept pressing. They wore me down. "You signed it?" I asked gently. She nodded. I didn't have the strength to argue. I never thought it would matter so much. Did Kyle know? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe James did it on his own. She handed me a sealed envelope. Inside 2 documents. The original will from 2020, my name clear as day, and the revised version dated 7 months later. In it, I had vanished. No mention. No token sum. Not even a line for legal completeness. They didn't just cut me out. They had erased me. Margaret's eyes were damp, but she wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was giving me facts. I scanned everything she said. "It's yours now." I slipped the envelope into my tote bag. When I got home that night, I uploaded the files to a cloud folder labeled "For Clarity, Not Revenge." I stared at the documents for a long time. There was no surge of rage, no furious text to my mother, no cathartic scream. Just confirmation of what I'd long suspected: I was never really theirs. In my old room, now used for storage, I had found something earlier that afternoon, a yellowed newspaper clipping folded and forgotten in a box of Kyle's soccer trophies. "Local girl wins state tech award. Samantha Johnson of Naperville North shines in solo robotics build." It had never been framed, never made it to the fridge. No one ever brought it up again after that week. I took a photo and uploaded it beside the will. At work the next day, I stayed late reviewing code for a pitch demo. My world was built from scratch, line by line, version after version. Every credential I had, I earned twice over, once in effort, once in silence. Ashley messaged you, okay. Better than expected. That wasn't a lie. Later that evening, as I set my laptop aside, Eric's name lit up my screen. Hey, he said. Got something weird? I raised an eyebrow. Define weird. He hesitated. Madeline's cousin messaged me. They're asking questions about you. I didn't attend the wedding. But somehow I was still in the photos. While the Foster estate buzzed with floral arrangements, polished cutlery, and moneyed laughter, I was sitting cross-legged on the floor of my apartment in Palo Alto. Ashley had turned it into our version of a watch party. Laptop open, Instagram, refreshed every 2 minutes, popcorn untouched. They'd gone with classic ivory for the bridesmaids. Madeline wore Vera Wang, predictable but safe. Kyle looked like Kyle. Same posture he'd had in high school pictures, chin tilted just enough to seem important. Still no mention of you, Ashley muttered, thumbing past another carousel of pre-wedding shots. They really committed to pretending you don't exist. I shrugged, though my stomach turned. Rehearsal dinner, welcome brunch, spa morning, every caption buzzed with names. Not mine. Wait, Ashley said, leaning in. Let's try this. She uploaded a throwback photo, me at 18 holding the first place robotics trophy from the regional STEM fair. My braces, my terrible haircut, the gleam in my eyes, undeniable pride. She captioned it. The real tech genius in the family. Glad some people didn't peak in high school. I raised an eyebrow. Too sharp, she asked. Sharp enough, I said, and hit share. The ripple was immediate. Foster cousin Elena, we later learned, slid into Ashley's DMs within the hour. A message tentative but curious. Wait, this is Kyle's sister. Ashley showed me the screen. They didn't even tell her you existed. I laughed. A hollow, quiet thing. There's always that one sibling who disappears, right? I quoted the caption Madeline had reposted the day before with a photo of the groomsmen. Patricia's number lit up my phone 10 minutes later. Ashley gave me a look, don't pick up. I wasn't going to, I said, tossing the phone face down. Moments later, the voicemail came through anyway. You need to tell Ashley to take that post down. Patricia's voice, hissed, barely controlled. You're humiliating your brother. This isn't how we resolve things. I blocked the number. Not out of rage, just efficiency. I had no intention of spending the evening being gaslit by someone who still thought I owed Kyle silence. Instead, I opened my laptop. Margaret had sent another email, subject line, second batch. Inside scans of legal documents from 2020 and 2021, showing exactly how my name had been quietly excised from family assets. At the bottom of one was her handwritten note, I thought I was protecting you. I was wrong. Ashley glanced over. Anything new? Just confirmation of the old. She nodded, then returned to her feed. Her photo had picked up traction. A few subtle likes from distant Johnson cousins. A couple of comments from our college friends. Always knew she was the real one. Miss seeing you both together. Then Elena replied again. This time not to Ashley, but to Eric. Eric called almost immediately. Elena just followed me. I blinked. Why, she's asking about our senior project. The one you presented at Tech Week. She said she's digging through the archives. I didn't respond right away. I was still processing the fact that Elena, someone I had never met who had been a stranger hours ago, was now piecing together a trail I had never thought to leave. What should I do? Eric asked. Nothing, I said, a quiet current rising under my words. Let her keep digging. Because for once I didn't need to speak up to be seen. The truth had started to leak, one post, one comment, one cousin at a time. And I was just getting started. Elena just followed me. And she's digging through our college archives. It started with a single photo. It ended with someone calling me the real Johnson. Ashley had never meant for things to snowball. A throwback post, a sharp caption, and suddenly her phone was buzzing with DMs from people who once wouldn't have looked twice at us during undergrad. One of them, strangely enough, was Elena Foster. Is this the Samantha Johnson Elena had messaged her, attaching a screenshot from a 2019 article about our senior capstone project, an autonomous communication protocol for wildfire drones? I hadn't thought about that presentation in years. Ashley replied with her usual grace, "Yep, the same Samantha who wasn't invited to her brother's wedding." That should have been it. But Elena had a curious streak. A whisper of doubt in a carefully curated wedding week. And then she remembered something. Northwestern 2018. Ashley was sitting in the back row of a feminist tech panel, the kind where ambitious women in blazers discussed visibility and credit in male-dominated labs. Madeline Foster had been there too. Not on stage, she was still a junior then, but she'd raised her hand during Q&A and asked, "What do we do when we realize our name is missing from the credits, but we did the work?" She was always razor sharp with red flags, Ashley told me later. That's what made her dangerous. Elena had sent Madeline the Hawk Labs article around noon. By 2, Madeline had emailed Kyle directly. "Did your sister really get a solo innovation grant from Hawk Labs in 2019? Kyle, true to form, responded with evasion cloaked in politeness. She was always into that kind of stuff. "We haven't really kept in touch." No mention of the fact that my name had appeared in MIT's junior accelerator list. No admission that their parents had refused to attend the award ceremony. Just enough plausible deniability to keep things neat. Meanwhile, I was finishing a pitch to a team in Oslo, unaware that a conversation about my existence was unfolding on the other side of the country. Ashley, however, was watching it unfold in real time. She didn't push, didn't accuse. Just replied to Elena's occasional messages with articles tagged "Memories, Quiet Corrections." When Elena asked why didn't Samantha go to the engagement party, Ashley replied, she didn't know there was one. When Elena asked, "Did your families have a falling out?" Ashley answered, "Only if silence counts." Then, at 4:47 p.m., Elena sent Ashley a screenshot of a text from Madeline. "One sentence, I want to talk to Samantha. Privately." Ashley didn't forward it right away. She stared at her phone for a few minutes, heart thudding. Then slowly she turned her screen toward me. We were on my couch, takeaway containers between us, the muted glow of the news playing in the background. I stared at the message, unblinking. "Do you want to?" Ashley asked. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached for my phone and opened LinkedIn. There it was. "Madeline Foster viewed your profile 3 minutes ago. No message yet. No connection request. Just a digital knock, soft but deliberate." "She's smart," Ashley said. "And she's suspicious. Suspicious of what that she's marrying into a family that rewrites history." I closed the app. My mind raced, not with panic but with clarity, because something had shifted. No longer was I the invisible sister. I was the variable Kyle hadn't accounted for. The file they'd lost track of. The line of code no one had debugged. And someone smart, someone engaged to my brother, was finally reading the documentation. Samantha checks LinkedIn. Madeline just viewed her profile. When Kyle was accepted into the Northwestern Summer STEM Institute, he told everyone it was all him. It never was. The Foster family library felt like a place built to hold secrets. Walnut-paneled shelves, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a silence too curated to be natural. Madeline sat there that Tuesday morning, a teacup cooling beside her laptop, as she flipped through digital records from Kyle's high school years. Not out of distrust, at least, not at first. But she'd asked Kyle for a few writing samples. His mother had offered to send some. Instead, Elena had beaten her to it. "Check this folder," Elena texted. "It's from your dad's archived recommendation batch from 2015. Look for neural logic trees. Just tell me if anything feels off." Madeline opened the file. Author Samantha J. Date. April 2015. Title: Neural Logic Trees. Adaptive decision structures in early AI modeling. It was brilliant. Sharp, thoughtful, complex without being convoluted. The kind of paper that didn't just earn scholarships, it turned heads. Only the recipient listed for the award it had accompanied was Kyle Johnson. Madeline blinked. She opened another tab and searched the name. Neural Logic Trees, Samantha Johnson. A cached page of the Naperville High School newsletter popped up. Senior Samantha Johnson awarded Best STEM Thesis and Special Recognition for Innovation. She stared at the date. Same week. Same title. But Kyle had used this project to gain acceptance into a private summer program in Boston, the same one he listed on his resume. The one he bragged about during a wedding planning lunch with her parents last week. Madeline's throat dried. She remembered that lunch clearly now. Kyle had laughed when her father, the federal judge, said integrity begins early. Kyle had smiled and toasted to hard work. No mention of his sister. Later that night, Madeline had asked teasingly, "What was your project title again?" He'd waved the question off. "Oh, some logic tree thing. Let's not get too nerdy." Then he'd kissed her hand and changed the subject. Back in the library, her laptop pinged. An email from Elena. Subject: It wasn't his work. We both know it. Attached was a scanned essay from the school's print archives, Samantha's original with her teacher's signature. The initials SJ were circled in red ink, barely fading after all these years. Madeline sat very still. She thought about the USB Samantha must have once left on the kitchen counter. How Kyle had always been quick to borrow things, ideas, phrases, even jokes. How everyone had brushed it off as sibling dynamics. Now it felt like theft in slow motion. Wedding prep resumed downstairs. Kyle's voice floated up, joking with the caterer, laughing about linen napkins. Then closer to his mother. "Let's keep things efficient." Less digging. Madeline closed the lid of her laptop. She didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, she walked outside. Phone in hand, found a quiet spot by the garden and typed a message to someone she'd never officially met. "Hi, Samantha. I think we've met before. At least on paper. Can we talk MF?" Then she hit send. And just like that, the name he'd borrowed was coming home. "Samantha receives a message. I think we've met before. Can we talk MF?" The vows were flawless. The silence afterward was even louder. A soft breeze swept through the Foster estate garden, teasing the silk ribbons tied to the archway. Everything was perfect. Every hydrangea in its place. Every fork and wine glass polished to near invisibility. And Kyle stood there, groomed, glowing, and confidently reciting his vows as if he'd rehearsed them, not for Madeline, but for the camera. "In this life," he said, voice unwavering, "we build our stories. And I've built mine with dedication, grit, and vision." Madeline didn't flinch. But she didn't smile either. The guests applauded politely. Patricia dabbed at one dry eye with a handkerchief, though it was hard to tell if it was sentiment or habit. From the third row, Elena caught Madeline's gaze and mouthed, "She knows." Samantha didn't see the ceremony firsthand. She didn't need to. She was curled on her sofa in Palo Alto, one hand around a chipped mug of Earl Grey, the other gently tapping rhythm into her knee. Ashley sat beside her laptop, open to a live stream from one of Madeline's cousins, who couldn't make it, some teenager broadcasting everything on a private Discord. They watched in silence as Kyle finished his vows, the camera shaking slightly, as someone zoomed in on the kiss. "That dress is stunning," Ashley whispered. "And Madeline looks calm." "She's thinking," Samantha replied. "She doesn't waste energy when she's thinking." A minute later, a new notification buzzed on Ashley's phone. Elena had posted a photo on Instagram, just a wedding program folded in half, the corner torn slightly. The caption read, "The missing sister." It didn't tag anyone. It didn't need to. Back in Boston, Patricia was growing agitated. She cornered Elena near the champagne bar. "You promised." "Not today. We are not talking about the girl who left. Elena smiled coolly. She didn't leave. You just never looked behind. At that exact moment across the country, Samantha played a recording Ashley had queued up. A solo piano piece. Uneven, uncertain in parts, but still beautiful. You wrote this, right? Ashley asked soft. Samantha nodded. For the high school showcase, they gave Kyle the performance slot. Said I could submit it as background music instead. No one clapped when it played, Ashley remembered. No one knew it was me. She reached over and adjusted the volume, letting the music fill the room. There was no audience now. Just silence and that strange kind of peace that sometimes comes when the truth floats to the surface on its own. At the Foster estate, guests made small talk during cocktail hour. Madeline drifted among them, gracious but distant. She didn't mention the essay. She didn't mention Samantha. But when Kyle sidled up to her with a grin and whispered, "That went well." "Huh." She tilted her head slightly and asked, "Kyle, did you really think this would stay buried forever?" The grin faded just a fraction, and somewhere in Palo Alto, Samantha smiled without joy. Not because she wanted revenge, but because for once someone else had seen the gaping hole where a name should have been and chose not to look away. Madeline, Kyle, did you really think this would stay buried forever? I was never supposed to be part of the wedding. Turns out I was its turning point. The coffee shop off University Avenue was mostly quiet that morning, the kind of silence found only in places where people come to work, not linger. I chose the corner table near the windows where the light filtered through eucalyptus trees and softened the edges of everything, even memory. Margaret's face flickered into focus on my laptop screen. The resolution wasn't perfect. Her reading glasses reflected half the screen, but her smile made up for it. "I saw the photo Elena posted," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "You're on Instagram?" She chuckled. "No, but Eric emailed it to me. Thought I'd want to see the program with the missing sister." She paused. "You did nothing. And yet, everything's changed." I didn't respond right away. I stirred my lukewarm latte, letting the spoon clink once then settle. "I didn't mean for any of this," I said. "I know," she replied. "That's why it mattered." The ping of my inbox pulled my eyes away. 2 new messages had just arrived, one from Madeline Foster, the other from Elena. I opened Elena's first. Subject integrity and everything that comes with it. "Samantha, I hope this isn't too forward, but thank you for being exactly who you are. Watching everything unfold this week, I realized something: you never raised your voice, and somehow that said more than any scream ever could. Thank you for showing us what integrity looks like." Elena Foster. No hashtags, no passive-aggressive phrasing, just clear, uncomplicated. Then came Madeline's message. Subject requesting a conversation, Samantha. I would appreciate the chance to speak with you privately. No expectations, no drama. Just the truth between women who both know how to read between the lines. Let me know if that's something you'd be open to. Respectfully, Madeline. I stared at the screen for a few long seconds, my fingers hovering over the keyboard before I closed the laptop altogether. Some bridges don't need to be crossed or burned. Sometimes they collapse behind you, and that's enough. Ashley arrived moments later with 2 drinks in hand, handing me a second coffee with a knowing look. "You look like you were about to commit violence with a latte spoon," she said. "Let me guess. Wedding aftermath." I slid the laptop back toward her. She read silently, then looked up. "You know they'll try to spin it now. Reframe it. Kyle, the misunderstood genius, the family misunderstood peacemaker." "Let them," I said. "They can write whatever fiction they want. I'm already somewhere else." I took out my phone, opened my notes app, and started drafting a blog post, something that had lived in the back of my mind for years, always unfinished. Title: The Myth of the Quiet One. Subtitle: When silence is mistaken for weakness and how that mistake becomes someone else's undoing. I saved it as a draft. No publish button. Not yet. Maybe never. Maybe just the act of writing it was enough. Margaret's voice returned to me as I packed up my things. You did nothing, and yet. Exactly. Back home, I sat at my desk and opened my inbox one more time. The wedding email thread still sat there 5 messages deep. Subject lines like RE RSVP follow-up reminder, wedding weekend logistics, final confirmation, foster estate, gate code. All of them so eager to reach a version of me that never existed. The agreeable, invisible girl who would slip in without a fuss. I selected them all, paused, then clicked delete. Not out of anger, not defiance, but completion. My story with them, at least this chapter, was over. The screen flickered as my inbox refreshed, and then I saw it. A contact request. No subject line, just a preview of the message. From Kyle Johnson, I owe you more than an apology. I stared at it for a while, not with rage, not even hurt, just the quiet clarity of someone who no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. An unexpected contact request from Kyle. Message preview, I owe you more than an apology. It wasn't the apology that startled me. It was that he remembered the blue folder. It arrived at 3:04 a.m. Pacific time. When I opened my inbox that morning, still half asleep and squinting through sunlight leaking between the blinds, I almost deleted it by reflex. The sender's name stopped me. Kyle Johnson. I stared at it for a long second. No subject line, just one line of preview text. I've rehearsed this message in my head for years. I clicked Samantha. I've rehearsed this message in my head for years. Always ended up saying nothing. Always convinced myself it was too late, or wouldn't matter, or wouldn't change anything. But last week when I saw your name in those comments, your photo being shared by people who had never met you but somehow knew who you were, I realized silence was no longer neutral. It was cowardice. You probably already know. But in case no one ever said it clearly, in 2015 I took your high school essay, the one from your blue folder, Neural Logic Trees. I copied it and submitted it under my name for the Summer Logic Camp application. I won that spot because of your work. You asked about the folder. I told you I hadn't seen it. But I had. I still remember how light it felt in my backpack, like carrying a lie. When Mom found out, she said, let it be. She's resilient. She told me to stay quiet. You probably don't remember your face the day you got the rejection letter. But I do. You smiled. You said maybe next year. And I remember thinking that smile was the worst thing I'd ever earned. I'm sorry. Not for getting caught. For not saying anything when it still could have meant something. Kyle. I didn't cry. Didn't even blink for a while. I reread it once. Then again. The second time I read slower until the line about Mom. That part cut deeper than the theft. The theft was selfishness. The silence was strategy. But that sentence, she's resilient. That was erasure disguised as praise. I stood, made coffee, didn't bother changing out of pajamas. Ashley shuffled in minutes later, her hair in a lopsided braid, still brushing sleep from her eyes. She looked at me, then the screen. Is that from him? I nodded. Kyle. She leaned over, read for a moment, then exhaled sharply. Wow. No excuses. That's rare. I know. Are you gonna reply? I shrugged. Not by email. Ashley poured herself a cup of coffee. Want help drafting something anyway? I shook my head and went to my bedroom. Dug through a file drawer until I found what I was looking for. The blue folder was long gone, but I'd scanned its contents years ago after that summer when Margaret asked for copies of my projects just in case you ever need to prove what's yours. She was always like that. Quiet foresight. I opened the old scan. My name in the upper right corner. Samantha Johnson. Senior thesis draft. Below it, the phrase I'd written with pride, exploring the neural logic of self-correcting AI trees. Still mine, still intact. I didn't attach it to a public post. Didn't email it to a school board. I just sent it to Kyle, as a reply. With a single line of text I remember too. Then I closed the tab and reopened my cloud archive. I added the file to a new folder titled Truth Undeniable. My phone buzzed. Private number. I let it ring once, twice. Then answered. Hello. The voice on the other end was sharp, familiar. Fragile in a way I hadn't heard since I was a child. Sam, Patricia said. Kyle told me what he did. About the essay. The folder. A long pause. We need to talk. I said nothing. Because for once, silence wasn't surrender. It was control. Patricia calls for the first time in a year. Kyle told me what he did. We need to talk. They used to finish my sentences. Now they hesitate to say my name. The Zoom window opened with a mechanical chime. I stared at the screen, watching it divide into neat little rectangles like windows of a house I'd long stopped calling home. My father appeared first, still in his checkered flannel shirt, glasses slipping low on his nose. A second later, Patricia joined, her hair neatly pinned, her lips drawn taut in a polite attempt at grace. There were no greetings. Only a strained quiet. Hi, I said eventually. Neutral. Patricia cleared her throat. You look... well? I didn't reply. Dad leaned closer to the camera, squinting. Sue, He stopped. I didn't flinch. I just raised an eyebrow. He corrected Sam. A small, cold nod from me. Close enough. Patricia tried to soften the moment with a brittle smile. Look, sweetheart, this whole thing with Kyle, it's messy. But I'm sure it's been cathartic. Maybe this is a chance for closure. Maybe even forgiveness. Forgiveness. She said it like it was something I owed them. Something I was withholding selfishly. Before I could respond, James spoke up, his tone unexpectedly level. We were wrong. Both Patricia and I turned to look at him. We didn't just mishandle things. We failed you, he continued. I don't expect kindness or understanding or any version of grace. Just, if you can find a way not to hate us, I'll take it. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. And still it wasn't enough. Why wasn't my name on the wedding invite, I asked. Silence. Patricia shifted in her seat, suddenly focused on something off-screen. James pressed his lips together tight. You signed off on every name I said. You RSVP'd. You helped host. Why was I erased? Patricia looked back at the camera, her eyes rimmed with something like regret, but it flickered too fast to trust. Because she said, finally, you make us feel guilty. I almost laughed. You mean, I said slowly, I remind you of what you did and didn't do. James looked down. Patricia didn't deny it. There it was. No excuses, no defense. Just the raw, clumsy confession of people who'd rather forget than fix. You all act like I exiled myself, I continued. But I didn't leave the family. I was quietly removed. That's not true, Patricia whispered. Then why was the blue folder never mentioned again? I snapped. Why did Kyle's stolen opportunity become a family success story while I became a footnote? James muttered something inaudible. What was that, I asked? He looked up. We thought you'd be fine. You always were. You mean you hoped I'd disappear quietly? Silence again. Patricia sighed, trying to reclaim some semblance of calm. You're angry, and you have every right. But don't let this destroy the family. I'm not destroying anything I said. I'm just finally refusing to be invisible. I'm not coming back, I added. Not for holidays. Not for calls. Not even for funerals. And not because I hate you, but because there's nothing left to return to. Neither of them spoke, and for once, they didn't try to argue. James nodded faintly, eyes damp. Patricia swallowed hard, then adjusted the scarf around her neck like she could hide behind it. I was about to end the call when Patricia spoke again. "Your grandmother's estate," she said. "Margaret left you something significant. We know you have the original will." I said nothing. "We just want to know," she continued, "what you plan to do with it." There it was. Not concern, not curiosity. Fear. The kind that only surfaces when power slips from your hands into someone else's. I looked directly at them. Calm, clear, and clicked end meeting without answering. It wasn't revenge. It was reallocation. The final PDF sat quietly on my laptop screen. All that White House deed savings accounts, property valuations summed up in courier font and legalese. I typed my name at the bottom. Samantha Johnson, date August 12th. It wasn't resignation, it was intent. 2 days earlier, I'd sent Mr. Collier, Grandma Margaret's longtime attorney, a precise request I formally decline ownership of the Oak Park property and associated cash inheritances. However, I would like to retain authority over any charitable or educational allocations previously intended by Margaret J. Douglas. He called it unusual. I called it necessary. Because this wasn't about Margaret's money. It was about what she saw in me and what no one else had dared to. Ashley and I sat under the shade of a eucalyptus tree on the Stanford campus lawn, her iced matcha sweating in one hand, the other holding up her phone while reading the first draft of the announcement. "MD Fund for Overlooked Girls," she read aloud. "Clever. Too clever." "No," she said. "It's surgical." I smiled. The MD Fund would grant annual micro-scholarships to high school girls in STEM who'd been overlooked by traditional recognitions, no GPA cutoffs, no flashy essay prompts. Just a letter of recommendation from a teacher who believed in them and one project they were proud of. I'd already reached out to 3 schools. One of them was mine. Irony wasn't lost on me when I pulled up in front of my old high school. The front entrance was exactly as I remembered: polished brass handles, scuffed white columns, and a signboard still misaligned by one crooked bolt. I didn't step inside, but I left an envelope at the office addressed to Mrs. Callahan, my 11th grade computer science teacher. Inside was a handwritten letter. "I'm not sure if you remember, but I remember you stayed behind one day to ask why I hadn't submitted my robotics project to the regional fair. I told you it wasn't good enough. You said, no, they weren't ready for you yet. I finally believe you. Thank you." That evening, Patricia's email arrived. Short. Measured. Subject: "So this is your final statement." Body: "Are you doing this to make your mother ashamed?" I stared at it for a full minute before responding. "No, Mom. I'm doing this to live the way Grandma believed I could, with clarity, with purpose, without waiting for anyone's permission." A week later, I opened my inbox to find something unexpected. Subject: "You probably don't remember me, Mrs. Callahan." The message: "Dear Samantha, I do remember. And I remember thinking this girl is going to build something extraordinary, but not for this school. You were the best student. We never gave proper credit. I've already nominated 2 girls for your fund. Thank you for giving me the chance. With pride, C." I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until I exhaled. That same afternoon, another email came in. Subject: New York Tech Daily. Interview request. Body: "We read your blog post, The Myth of the Quiet One. We'd love to talk. Not just about tech, but about your story. Are you available next week?" I leaned back, sunlight pouring across my desk, and smiled. Available more than ever. I didn't mention names. I didn't need to. By the time the New York Tech Daily podcast went live, my blog post had already gained traction. The Myth of the Quiet One. A piece I once wrote in silence, saved as a draft, doubting if anyone would care, was now sitting on the front page of LinkedIn's trending section. Ashley texted over $12,000 in shares in 48 hours. That's not a myth anymore. But the real moment, the one that felt like stepping through a door I'd always been told was locked, came when the podcast invite arrived. We'd love to feature you on our segment Voices That Built Without Permission, the producer wrote. The title alone made me nod. The studio was digital. I didn't need to fly to New York. Just a ring light, a clear mic, and nerves that danced in my stomach like I was back presenting science fair posters in the school gym. Only this time, no one could snatch the credit. The host's voice came through, first warm, direct. Welcome to New York Tech Daily. I'm Sarah Ling. Today's guest is someone whose story has quietly resonated across the tech world this week, Samantha Johnson. Samantha, thanks for joining us. Thanks for having me, I said, steadying my voice. Sarah didn't waste time. Your post wasn't just about STEM. It was about erasure, about being written out of your own story. And yet you never once said who did it. Why? I smiled faintly, leaning toward the mic. Because silence isn't the same as secrecy. I've had enough of being silenced, but I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm here to remember what they tried to forget. She paused. Then softly, that's powerful. We covered the lost awards, the mysteriously vanished blue folder, the essays reused without credit, the ways brilliance is sometimes buried because it shines in the wrong hands, or comes from the wrong daughter. I used to think I said that I was the problem, that maybe being overlooked meant I hadn't done enough. But invisibility doesn't mean irrelevance. Sometimes it's just that the story they want doesn't have space for someone like you. Sarah asked, what would you tell the younger version of yourself? I didn't hesitate. That you weren't invisible. You were just inconvenient to the version of success they'd already written. The moment the episode aired, the response felt tidal. Thousands of messages. Women. Students. Quiet achievers. People who'd lived their own versions of being reduced to shadows in someone else's spotlight. Ashley sent a screenshot. Top comment, I see you now. And I won't forget again. Grace Chakrish Coder 93. Then another. How many of us lost opportunities just because someone louder took credit? And then one that stopped me cold. She deserved better. She always did. Anonymous. It didn't say Kyle. It didn't need to. That night, I sat with tea cooling beside me, scrolling through reposts and reactions. My name was no longer a footnote beneath someone else's win. For the first time, I was the headline. And then came a message from a nonprofit I'd quietly admired for years. Subject: STEM mentorship. Opportunity to pay it forward. We're launching a new mentorship initiative focused on women of color in high school STEM programs. You've been nominated as a potential lead mentor. Would you be open to joining us, Samantha? I stared at the screen, felt the shift quiet and seismic. Not fame, not vindication, something sturdier. A chance to shape someone else's beginning without needing to erase anyone. I clicked reply. Closure isn't silence, it's clarity. The folding chairs were plastic. The projector flickered every so often. A nervous hum filled the workshop room as 22 high school girls sat clustered around tables, each holding a copy of their first resume draft. This was the mentor orientation at Pacific Scholars for Equity, a small but quietly powerful nonprofit operating out of San Jose. It wasn't glamorous. There were no press badges, no microphones. Just young minds who didn't yet know how brilliant they already were. I stood at the front with a stack of red pens, my name printed on a lanyard, Samantha Johnson, volunteer mentor. I didn't need to be anyone else. A girl near the back raised her hand, eyes wide with hesitation. Miss Samantha, she said, have you ever felt like you weren't good enough? Like someone told you that? I smiled. It was the kind of smile that came from having lived the answer. Nearly every year I can remember. Before I turned 23, I replied. Sometimes it wasn't even words. Just how they looked past me as if I had nothing to say worth listening to. She nodded, then whispered, "Me too." I didn't tell her it would stop. I told her she would grow louder. After the session ended, Ashley was waiting outside the building, 2 iced matcha lattes in hand and a small envelope in her back pocket. Her sunglasses perched just wrong enough on her nose to signal that she had something. "You're glowing," she said. "And before you argue here." She pulled the envelope out and handed it to me. The paper was aged cream-colored, the edges worn by time. On the front, "To Samantha, when the noise clears. MD." It was Margaret's handwriting. I hadn't seen it since the estate paperwork. We didn't speak on the drive to Half Moon Bay. Ashley knew when not to fill the air. The waves broke steadily like breath as I opened the letter, sitting cross-legged in the sand. "My dearest Sam, by the time you read this, the storm will have passed, or at least I hope you will have learned how to build in the rain. I have no doubt they will see your worth, but it may come far too late to matter. That's the beauty and the sadness of becoming who you were meant to be. It rarely fits into the frame they planned for you. When they realize who you are, it will already be too late to shape you. But it won't be too late for you to shape others. That's the real inheritance, Sam. Not houses, not money. Legacy is who you lift after you stand, and you, my quiet storm, were always meant to lift." It wasn't a farewell. It was a confirmation. I folded the letter carefully and looked out toward the Pacific, where the horizon offered no answers, just space. "Not gonna cry?" Ashley asked gently. I shook my head. "No, I already did. A long time ago. This is something else." We sat there until the sun sank enough to paint the water orange. Then I checked my phone just to clear notifications. One message. Unknown number. I read the interview. "There's something I need to say. Heather." My thumb hovered above the screen. Of all the people I expected to remain silent, Heather had always been at the top of the list. The golden daughter, untouched by scandal, balanced and unbothered. We never fought because we never really spoke. Her message was short, neutral, careful, but it cracked open a new door. I didn't open it. Not yet. But I didn't delete it either. Because this wasn't the end. It never really was. They erased me from invitations, from family photos, from memories they rewrote to suit their pride. But they couldn't erase the truth I carried, not when I chose to stop whispering it. Justice didn't come with loud verdicts or courtroom gavel strikes. It came in steady choices, one refusal, one signature, one girl I mentored who finally saw herself as worthy. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates long after silence ends. Sometimes, reclaiming your place in the story doesn't mean returning, it means writing a better one without asking for permission. If this story struck a chord, like, share, and comment below, type 1 if you felt seen, or 2 if you wished for more.